the Rambler Network.
Good morning. Welcome back to The Digressor. I'm Trevor, and today we're talking about the Cola Wars, which, as you know, was a very brutal, bloody, long-standing war between the cola companies, and that divided us into the current factions that we're currently in, and why the world is exactly the way it. Okay, no, obviously it isn't what it is. It is the term used for the ad campaigns between Coca-Cola and Pepsi through the 70s and 80s, specifically the 80s. There were always, well, I mean, obviously there were competitors, there were sodas. And for the record, I know that this is always a debate among people. In this podcast, we say soda. Even though I'm from Ohio, I never have called it pop. My friends in Ohio say pop, and I'm like, why do you call it pop? And they're like, because it's called pop. And I'm like, no, it's soda. They're like, why do you call it soda? That's so weird. Like, I could do a whole episode on that, but no. I will call it soda. Anyway, so basically, it goes back to the 1800s, kind of, because Coca-Cola was invented in 1886 by Dr. John Pemberton in Atlanta, Georgia, and Pepsi was invented a few years later in 1893 by Caleb Bradham, who was a pharmacist, and it was originally called Brad's Drink. But 2 years later, in 1898, it was renamed Pepsi Cola. Because can you imagine if they never changed it, and to this day it was called Brad's Drink? That would be a little weird and kind of funny, actually. But Coca-Cola is actually the one who basically solidified the look of Santa Claus. It was for an ad campaign. And the famous look we have for Santa, the red suit and the hat and everything, that's from Coca-Cola. And of course it's red because Coca-Cola is red. It's that's the thing. So Pepsi started something in the 70s called the Pepsi Challenge. Basically was they would have a blind taste test in public, and one was Pepsi and the other was Coke, and you try them both, and it's like, which one do you like better? And according to them, a majority of the people said Pepsi, but I have never preferred Pepsi. To me, Pepsi just it tastes like watered down Coca-Cola. That's honestly what it feels like to me, or tastes like to me. I keep saying feels like. But I did the Pepsi challenge, not an official one, but someone tried to do it in my school, and they're like, let's see if you could tell the difference. And yeah, they taste very different. And I took a drink, I drank one, and I was like, this tastes like Coca-Cola. I drank the other one, and I was like, this tastes like watered down Coca-Cola. This has to be Pepsi. It was Pepsi. But yeah, in 1985, Coca-Cola, they almost lost the Cola Wars because they introduced New Coke. That was basically a reformulated version of the classic formula. One thing about Pepsi is it's more of it's a sweeter one it's more of a sweeter drink, and I think they put more sugar As someone said, there's like caramel in it or caramelized or I don't know. I this is the most I've looked into Pepsi, and I did see someone say it's like it's caramelized or it's caramel or something. I don't know. I don't like Pepsi, but the point is Pepsi supposedly tastes sweeter, and that's why supposedly, I should say allegedly, alleged, alleged, supposedly, that's why people prefer Pepsi. But I don't know a whole lot of people that prefers Pepsi. I know people that don't care either way. I know people who don't care either way. There's good and bad in each. I like Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew's kind of cool. It's a Pepsi product. I don't like Pepsi itself, like the actual drink Pepsi. Pepsi has some good drinks in it. They got rid of Sierra Mist, which I didn't like. They replaced it with Starry, which what's wrong with Sierra Mist? Anyway, so they introduced new Coke to try to, I guess, kind of rebrand to make it as a sweeter version of the classic formula. And apparently, people didn't mind the flavor so much. Their problem was that they were replacing the classic Coca-Cola. For a few months, you actually couldn't get classic Coca-Cola anywhere because they were replaced with new Coke. And so Pepsi actually declared themselves the winner. They put like front page ads and everything, like we won because people don't like Coke now. Oh, they made a mistake. And after a couple of months, Coca-Cola was like, "Okay, we're gonna reintroduce this as." That's why the Coca-Cola bottles it says Coca-Cola Classic because it's the original formula at back. And at first, they were trying to do both Coca-Cola Classic and New Coke, but people still didn't like it. All they had to do was rename New Coke. People didn't like it because they were still confused. Like, what is this? Is because it's called New Coke? Like it's the new Coke. It's replacing the old Coke, which is the one we like. And so they could have just named it something else, like Coca-Cola Sweeter or something. I don't know. That's a bad name, but that's why I'm not in marketing. They could have named it something like Undiet Soda or something. I don't know because it's sweeter. I don't know. They during the middle of the Cola Wars, they really ramped up with the whole celebrity endorsements, and the two big ones that everyone seems to remember from back then. They didn't exactly age well. Pepsi chose Michael Jackson, who is controversial in his own right. Uh, that also didn't well. It didn't age well, and it didn't go well because he was filming a Pepsi commercial. Pyrotechnics went off early or wrong, and set his hair on fire, and that's what led him down the whole the countless plastic surgeries that he ended up doing. I don't know if he had done one before, but I know I read somewhere that that's what was the beginning of that because of Pepsi. So that wasn't very well, but also because of his controversial what everything he got accused of and everything uh didn't age well. But that's nothing next to Coca-Cola's. Coca-Cola chose Bill Cosby, who I'm not even going to touch that one. uh, well, poor choice of words. But anyway, obviously they're still competing now. They're competitors. I thought they'll always be competitors. It's just the nature of the business. But it's not as intense as it used to be. Case in point, in 2006, somebody who worked as a secretary at Coca-Cola got a hold of. I've heard two different versions. It was either the secret formula or an unreleased drink. For the sake of this story, because I know I've heard two versions of the story and they're both identical except for what she took. It's either she took the actual secret formula that Coca-Cola, one of the big secrets behind them is nobody knows the formula. Nobody knows how it's made. All of that. It's basically this big secret. It's like there's like the joke about it's behind a big vault, and yeah. So it was either that or she stole some unreleased drink that Coca-Cola was working on. Either way, she took it and she went to Pepsi to try to offer it to them for a few $1,000,000. Like, hey, give me some money and I'll give you their secret formula. And Pepsi, you know what they did? Someone comes to them trying to sabotage their biggest competitor, and yeah, you know what they did? They called Coca-Cola right up and was like, hey, here's the thing that's happening, and they got the FBI involved. So that's when I read that years ago, and I should have read up again on it. I did read up on it a little bit. I looked it up just so I can tell the story here, and that's when I heard like two different versions. Again, I've always heard two different versions, but either way, they. That's when I realized it's the whole Cola Wars thing. I always envisioned it because of the naming of it, Cola Wars. I always envisioned it being like this really intense, one or the other thing. But then when I heard that story of someone tried to sabotage Coca-Cola by giving their secret formula to their biggest competitor, and then Pepsi calling Coca-Cola up and was like, "Hey, we're not even going to look at this because we don't want to sabotage you." That's when I realized that it's all fun and games, or fun. It's lighthearted. It's a lighthearted competition. In a way. I mean, it's still like, it's business and it's a big corporate world, but if it was really as intense as everyone made it seem, then Pepsi would have looked at that and sabotaged Coca-Cola, which I always thought was kind of cool. I still don't like Pepsi as much. Not as much. I was gonna say at all, but I do like some some Pepsi products. My favorite soda actually is not Coca-Cola. I like Coca-Cola, but it's not my favorite. I actually haven't had actual Coca-Cola in a long time. Probably like 10 years. I don't know. It's been a long time. I haven't had Pepsi and I don't even remember how long. Actually, probably more recent than I've had Coca-Cola. I should probably change that. But my favorite soda is Sprite Zero, which is, as you know, a Coke product. And my second favorite soda is RC, which is neither Coke or Pepsi. It's its own thing, which I didn't know that. I didn't know that until a few years ago. I was like, which one is it? Is it Coke or is it Pepsi? And I looked, and the answer was neither. It is its own thing, which is cool. Royal Crown, that's what RC stands for, which is, I don't know, I find that cool. But I digress.
The Rambler Network.